Good evening, everyone. I'm glad you're with us tonight. We're going to continue our study of Hebrews. We'll be in chapter 12. There's 13 chapters, so this is the next to last chapter. It's an interesting chapter and it's very uplifting. So we'll begin by reading the chapter and then going through some of the questions and some of the review of it and go from there. Beginning with chapter 12. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against him, lest ye be wearied and faint in your mind. You have not resisted into the blood, striving against sin, and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth and chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If he endure chastening, God dealeth with you and with his sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasten not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all you are partakers, then ye are all bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us and gave us reverence, shall not much rather be in the subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily for a few days chastened us, and after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that he might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nonetheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed. Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Lest there be any fornication or profane person, as Esau, for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. For ye know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place for repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. For ye are not come unto the mount that might be touched, and that burned with fire, nor into blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of the trumpet, and the voice of the words, which voice they that heard entreated, that the word should not be spoken to them any more. For they could not endure that which was commanded, and if so much as a beast touch the mountain, it shall be stoned, or thrust through with a dart. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. But ye are come unto the Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, and heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and to the spirit of just men made perfect, and to Jesus the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of the sprinkling, that speaketh better things than of Abel. See that ye refuse not him that speaketh. For if they escaped not who refused him that spake on the earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven, whose voice then shook the earth, but now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And his word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of the things that were shaken, as though things that were made, and of those things that cannot be shaken, may remain. Wherefore, we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved, let us have grace, whereby we may serve God acceptably, and reverently, and godly fear. For our God is a consuming fire. And that's chapter 12, and we'll go through some of the summaries of it, and we'll go through some questions and go through some answers, and then just take a general overview of the chapter. Now, in chapter 12, with the heroes of faith of witness cheering us on, we're to run the race of faith, looking to Jesus, example for endurance and in God's loving discipline, lest we fall short of his grace. And that's the first 17 verses of the chapter. Coming not to Mount Sinai, but to glorious Mount Zion. That's 18 through 24. We are given the sixth warning, not to refuse or defy him who speaks from heaven. And that's the last 4 verses. So here are the points that they suggest for us to ponder. How Jesus was able to endure the cross. The role of discipline in the life of a Christian. And the danger of defying him who speaks from heaven. So let's go on to some of the review questions. So what are the main points of this chapter? The first main point is the need for endurance and discipline. The second is the contrast between Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. And then the last point in it was a warning against defying he who speaks from heaven. So, how are we to run the race? And this is the first 3 verses. We're supposed to lay aside every weight, especially the sin of unbelief, and look to Jesus for inspiration. This is something we should be doing without any hesitation whatsoever. Question number 3, if we experience hostility, striving against sin, how should we view it? And this is verses 4 through 9. We should view it as a chastening from the loving Father who knows it's for our good. It's telling us God's going to teach us things that are going to be challenging to us, and maybe not comfortable for us, but for our own good. Next question, number 5. As we run the race of faith, what should we pursue and how? We should pursue peace and holiness as we run the race. And we need to be careful not to fall short of God's grace. And then he referred and told us how Esau fell short, and he lost everything because of it. How did Mount Sinai appear to Moses and the Israelites? To them it was a terrifying sight and a terrifying voice. Question number 7, to what have we come? This is verses 23 through 24. We've come to Mount Zion and a holy Jerusalem. There's an innumerable number of company of angels, a general assembly of the church of the firstborn, the judge, God, the judge of all, spirits of just men made perfect, Jesus, who's the mediator of the new covenant, and the blood of the sprinkling that speaks better things than Abel. We're talking about Jesus' sacrifice, which was the only pure sacrifice that would actually be of any benefit in the long run for us. And the next question, which is the last question, lists 4 reasons we should not refuse him who speaks from heaven. And this is the last 4 verses. We should not refuse him because someday he will shake and remove the earth and heaven. We're told that this earth is going to come to an end and there's going to be a judgment day. So we should never refuse God because the consequences are inevitable. Second, we're receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And that's when we get to heaven, nothing can affect it. It's permanent. You know, we look around today and there's all kinds of things that affect your life, that affect your things you do. Once we make it to heaven, there'll be no more strife, there'll be no more struggling. Everything will be as it should be forever. Also, we can have grace by which to serve God with reverence and godly fear. We should want and enjoy serving God. The blessings for it are uncalculable when you think about it. Just the fact that someday we'll be with Him in heaven and have, you know, people ask other people, and we get asked, are you happy? And sometimes we say, well, yes, we're happy. Sometimes we say, no, we're not happy, or I don't know if I'm happy, or I think I'm happy. When we're in heaven, we will know completely what joy and happiness is. Also, the fourth reason we should not refuse him who speaks from heaven, that's because God is a consuming fire. He is all-powerful and just unable to be opposed in any way, shape, or form. We're foolish to refuse anything that God tells us to do. Well, that's the lesson for tonight. I appreciate your listening and your patience. We have one more chapter in Hebrews. If you stop and think about it, Hebrews has been an exciting chapter. It explains all about the second covenant, the covenant with Christ, the blessings we have that are better than we've ever had before, better than what the Jewish people were ever able to achieve. So let's come back next week. Let's get the last chapter done, and then we'll move on to something new. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.